No, yeah, okay, so, like, the other day I was watching Scary Godmother, like you do every Halloween, and you don't know what Scary Godmother is? There we go. I've had a crush on Scary Godmother since I was 7. I know Scary Godmother in ways that you don't. The animated duology movie series, that of which aired on Cartoon Network during Halloween season. It was originally a couple of kids' books and some comic books. And I'm going to jump into not only the origins of Scary Godmother, but I'm also going to compare and contrast the story of the movies compared to the story of the source material. But first, for all of you who, for some reason, hasn't watched Scary Godmother and are still watching this video, first of all, you're awesome. But second of all, what's wrong with you? I'm gonna do a quick recap of Scary Godmother. It's time for Halloween in our Uncanny Valley CGI. Jimmy had to take Hannah trick-or-treating, which he did reluctantly comply. With a devilish lie, Jimmy brings Hannah to the spook house, where monsters are said to live. She goes inside with candy for the monsters to give, but locked and alone, she's left to cry, and Scary Godmother appears to lift Hannah's spirits high. Okay, this is harder than I thought it would be. When you're the queen of Halloween, you're allowed to kidnap children to the fright side.
Oh my, Scary Godmother! Sorry to be so late, but I just had to get these old bones bleached for the party.
Mr. Pettybones is the inspiration to our skeleton out of the closet. Oh, how worlds collide. This is Harry the werewolf in sheep's pajamas. That's Max and Orson, and Ruby, Orson's mama. I'm already sick of this. Let's just go back to normal. Oh my goodness.
And their son, Orson.
Are you a real vampire?
Of course I'm a real vampire. Are you a real human?
You know, I don't think kids have an easier time making friends because they're kids. I think it's just because their parents kind of obligate them to be friends. I wish someone did that with adults. I don't know how to make friends anymore. I'm not sure I ever knew. Bugaboo, the monster under your bed, but not my bed. I've been waiting for that big sexy fuzzball to appear under my bed for years, but he never came. While Hannah is off on an adventure, Jimmy and his friends are literally just chilling outside the spook house, and this is taking at least like 30 minutes, and they haven't gone inside to check on her. Literally nothing is happening with Jimmy and the other kids. Honestly, not much happens in this movie, if I'm going to be frank. It's more like a slice of life comedy where they just do funny stuff. It feels like you're hanging out with friends who happen to be monsters. I guess that's what makes it so unique. What's funny is that you see a lot of small jokes throughout the movie that they pulled from the comics. The pizza joke, signing your soul away, that was in the comic. The movie is actually really weird after reading the comics, which I'll be covering and is the whole point of this video, but you have fully fleshed out plots in the comics. And the first movie they do is a goofy Halloween party. I'm now flabbergasted why they went this route. I'm not saying it's bad. I watch this movie every Halloween, but there's just so much they could have done. Bugaboo tells Hannah that Jimmy lied to her and that they should play a prank on Jimmy to get revenge on them, so they all scheme on how to give them one heck of a trick to jostle their treats. Lots of scaring commences. Don't worry, Hannah has come to rescue them with the power of her flashlight, the natural bane to all monsters, our hero, our savior, and that's why all phones come with the flashlight feature. Fun fact. The big kids run away. Scary Godmother gives her a key that she can use on any door so that she can come back to the fright side, and they go home. Now I'm recapping, assuming you've seen it already. I'm realizing if I were trying to convince you to go watch this movie, I am doing a very bad job. I mean, it's a comedy. If I told you the jokes, it wouldn't be funny. It's like trying to get people to understand why Lucky Star is funny. It just is. Trust me. It's free on YouTube. Go watch the movies and then come back to this video. That's not all. That's not all. Then comes a baby sequel movie that's infinitely better than the first and is the one that everyone remembers. Jimmy has some rightfully deserved trauma from last Halloween and is now horrified of the monsters coming to get him.
I was just downstairs, organizing and alphabetizing your potions and notions and lotions and...
I have to say, the voice cast for this movie is actually perfect. This is exactly the voice they needed for each of these characters, especially Harry having the milady voice. Jimmy decides he's going to ruin Halloween by destroying all the pumpkins so there's no jack-o'-lanterns. Do they not have those blow-up mold, like, pumpkins that you can buy? Oh no! It's working?
Winter's come early this year. I gotta make my Christmas cards.
Actually, according to the comics, they don't actually know about Christmas. They celebrate solstice, where Mr. Boogieleggs gives them presents. This movie is now deviating from the canon source material. Hannah decides, hey, we can still use them. And so Halloween is saved. So he sabotages the costumes and candy. Halloween is ruined.
We don't have to buy treats. We can make our own.
Halloween is saved. You get the idea. These Halloween baking instructional segments are the reason I loved the curious creations of Christine McConnell. TP the Spook House. They won't be able to have a party. I love Hannah's solution to this because she just goes, let's just do nothing. Pretend they're ghosts. We're good. I don't see how this would have ruined their plans anyway. Like, people have had parties in worse conditions. Hannah actually brings them to the fright side without them knowing. It's party time! Jimmy became so grotesque with his hatred that he actually managed to scare Bugaboo. And so they all decide, if you can scare Bugaboo, you deserve to win the grand prize for best costume. And now Jimmy has newfound self-confidence and no longer hates Halloween. Sometimes it just takes a little recognition to change someone's point of view. Now, did you go see the movies? Did you already watch them? Are you back? Are you okay? Cool? Awesome? I like Scary Godmother so much I'm thinking about getting a tattoo. And I mean a big one. I'm thinking of completing my sleeve with a big Scary Godmother right here. Don't test me. I really like Scary Godmother. Now, before we get into the origins of the comic books, you should know that a massive complete compendium is releasing on November 5th, where it collects literally every Scary Godmother comic. This is not sponsored. Go support the creator, and I'll be adding more interesting info on how you can support the creator at the end of this video. Now, the movie, I forgot to record this part, so I'm doing it in post. The movies are actually a mix between the original comic books, and the original source material is actually a mix between children's books and comic books, where the narrator explains what's happening and you get a glimpse of the world and all the dialogue in the comic illustrations, which makes it really unique to read, adding the feeling and inner monologue of the characters in the narration that is typically lacking in comics, and where novels excel, and the beauty and facial expressions that comic books excel in. So it's a really nice blend of the two. What's surprising is that it's actually her mom that mentions Scary Godmother will appear to keep Hannah, our main character, safe, seemingly already knowing of her existence. The original story is actually incredibly short. Hannah goes to the spook house, Jimmy leaves her alone, and she cries from fear. Scary Godmother introduces herself, Pettibones, and Bugaboo. They prank Jimmy and his friends, and Hannah has a good Halloween, and now they're scared straight. Not once do they go to the fright side. It was very much a rough concept that was expanded upon in the movie using elements of Jill Thompson's later stories. The Revenge of Jimmy is the Halloween version of How the Grinch Stole Christmas. She directly says so in the sketchbook section at the end of the book. Jimmy, now traumatized by the events of last Halloween, decides that if he stops Halloween, then monsters won't be able to come out and get him. One key difference is that in order for the monsters of the fright side to come to our world, Scary Godmother guides them to the Halloween bridge that reveals itself once a year, but the more Jimmy tries to ruin Halloween, the more lost Scary Godmother becomes, or supernatural events prevent them from reaching the bridge. And the more Hannah finds a way around Jimmy's shenanigans, the more Scary Godmother's path becomes clear. And instead of the spook house being TP'd, it was all the floats for the Halloween parade. Not sure why they changed that, probably to save time on animating. The end is all pretty much the same, slightly different. There's more differences in the sequel than there is in the original. Jimmy grabs onto a massive balloon and is almost whisked away, but the monsters save his life, and Jimmy realizes that maybe the real monster was him all along. That maybe our fears eat us away more than the monsters in our stories. And he has a change of heart concerning Halloween, and they all eat Scary Godmother's treats and celebrate Halloween. So the main story beats are still present, but the movies do a better job at fleshing out the characters and also giving Hannah more of like a drive to actually save Halloween. And the movies do a much better job at showcasing the fright side. But now that we're done with the movies, what about the source material that never got any adaptations? And how much darker do they become? So it's another Halloween and they're prepping for a neighborhood Halloween party. Now Hannah gripes to her mom that she never invited the monsters, and the mom seems to kind of blow her off like she doesn't believe monsters are real, so it seems like she doesn't know about Scary Godmother, and maybe her mentioning it was just a fluke? This is actually the first time Hannah ever goes to the fright side. And instead of a key in order to go to the fright side, you actually have to do a ritual where you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and close your eyes when you open a door. There is no key. And it's here we're actually introducing the vampire neighbors Orson, Ruby, and Max, as well as Harry the werewolf. Also the bar. There's also drinking, a little strange for a kid's book. Jimmy is now completely flipped. He now wants to outdo everyone at the Halloween party. But the real story is that Scary Godmother has a secret admirer. Spoiler warning, it's me. Scary Godmother is the reason I'm attracted to older women. Hardwired my brain from when I was a baby. Let's just say I wasn't watching The Owl House just because the story was good. The comics now very heavily focus on the adventures in the fright side rather than our world. And if you liked Hannah and Orson's friendship in the movie, it's twice as good in the comics. They're very much rapscallions that get into trouble. Harry's first introduction is actually him trying to serenade Scary Godmother because Hannah and Orson lead him to believe Scary has a crush on him, probably where he got his abhorrent confidence, give an incel a cookie and all that. I'm foreshadowing. Don't forget casual sexual harassment. You see, it's funny because turns out Jimmy was Scary's secret admirer. He showed up, everyone, by bringing a hot date to the party. I never thought I'd be so jealous of some kid. I wish that were me! There's only moderate gore in the books, don't worry. You see, Joe Thompson rapidly move away from the kids' book aspects of the story and commit fully to making it just comic books by the time we reach T for Orson. Which, I'll remind you, her previous works are primarily comic books. Like she was an illustrator for Sandman and Wonder Woman and a bunch more. This is also the story where we find out Harry has a human mom. They absolutely hint that Mr. Pettybones is gay, or maybe possibly trans, kinda, maybe quote unquote. They're having a ladies only tea party and Orson asks why Mr. Pettybones gets to go, and Harry starts to explain, realizes he doesn't want to be the one to have this conversation with a kid, and just tells Orson that it's because Pettybones makes really good shrimp puffs. It seems like they don't really know anything about other holidays, given that when Orson mimics Santa going down a chimney to break into the tea party, he says he got the idea from Hannah telling him about Santa rather than him just knowing about it himself. But they know about hell! I quote, "Scully, do you remember ordering the Dante's Inferno special from Diablo Brothers? That's a topping from every circle of hell." Halloween Town may be connected to other holidays, but the fright side is connected to hell. Just some fruit for thought for you. When is Scary Godmother getting a cameo in Has-Been Hotel? Please, I would love that so much. Remember how Daryl was dressed as a piece of candy in the movie? Did you ever think that was weird? Turns out, it was originally supposed to be candy with a big nail through it. You know, like finding razor blades in your candy. Or I see why they made her change it. They made her change it even in the comics. You can separate the Scary Godmother comics into two categories, colored and black and white. The colored comics being what we have just covered. Those are the main stories that more directly influenced the movies. Now we're gonna go into the comic books, the black and white ones, that were either 1, not appropriate for a kid's show, and 2, actually tells you the origin story of the Queen of Halloween herself, Scary Godmother. Spooktacular Stories is like a mini series of comics that lasted like 2 issues. All of these comics were originally published under Serious Comics. Some of them releasing in between the colored main stories that I just covered. I am covering the comics in order of importance, not in order of chronological release. Just trust me. Scary Godmother and Friends literally only being 3 pages long and describes how monsters celebrate the 4th of July. Odd choice, but I know now that she's a red-blooded American. My Bloody Valentine gives us a lot of material to work with because it's a story that entirely focuses on the vampire family. Ruby visits Scary Godmother because her and her husband Max are fighting. Ruby wants to incorporate new things in their life, like television and other fun, trendy things, while Max is such a stickler for tradition that he has an aneurysm and blows his lid. Even a queen of the night enjoys a traditional dance now and then, like Batussi. I like some bussy. Batussi, too. This collection is actually all stories of how they discover and celebrate other holidays besides Halloween. Of course, Orson only knows about Valentine's Day from the massacre that happened in 1929. Another not-so-subtle joke, Mr. Pettibones runs out of the closet screaming how he just can't take it anymore, and Scary Godmother tells him, "You should never be ashamed for being yourself." And just like a good chaotic gay, he tells her, "Screw that man, sounds like you need a makeover and a night on the town to feel better." Period. I may be reading too much into this, but Max asks the professor for help, and he offers Max an obedience potion that will make Ruby do whatever he wishes.
Yeah, bro. Just drug your wife, man. Don't be a pussy.
Max tells him that he can do that anyway if he wanted to, he's a vampire, and that face tells me he uses that power in very specific circumstances. Consensually, of course. But more importantly, the professor tells him if she's still doing all the traditional vampire stuff, new trendy things on top of that doesn't make her less of a vampire. He goes to Harry for some bro advice, and here's where I realize Harry doesn't really have a human mom. Her name is Mrs., I may screw up this pronunciation, Le Gavaudin, named after the beast of Gavaudin, a man-eating animal that terrorized the province of Gavaudin in France in 1764. A key descriptor is that its tail is longer than a wolf's, thus the connection to werewolves, I guess. She's just the alpha. Foreshadowing delivered, Harry is a Redditor that gets into arguments online to make him feel smart and superior. And to boot, he's a basement dweller that doesn't pay rent and mooches off his mom. He's even more insufferable than in the movies. This is also the comic where they introduced the spooky s'mores activity that they used in the movies. Ruby, Pettibones, and Scary all go to the bar where Ruby drinks way too much. It's also the same bar that Max and Harry go to for their hangout. Turns out Max is a lady killer. Throughout the entire story, women swoon over him. I mean, well, he is the king of the night. And the men hitting on Ruby are pigs, and she just can't help but compare them to Max, who is so charming when they first met. And Max, being surrounded by women, can't help but compare them to Ruby, who is just so vibrant and unique. Max points out someone in the crowd who he feels has that special spark that he's looking for, and it turns out to be Ruby. Aww. Rekindling that feeling of love at first sight, and he's very into her makeover. Max realizes he was wrong, Ruby realizes Max wasn't all wrong, and still enjoys some things that are old-fashioned. Compromises are made, and feelings are mended. And then they fuck. Loud. I feel bad for Orson. A strange power established in Wild About Harry, a book that is fun to read but not all that important, is that Scary Godmother can poof herself onto Hannah's shoulder in our world like a spooky angel come to give advice. There's actually nothing in this that would actually be warranted for this video. So, the story is really funny, you should go read it. And now we're gonna get on with what you're here for, the actual origin of Scary Godmother. So this is probably my favorite story out of all the Scary Godmother comic books, so I'll do it justice and go over the whole thing. Scary Godmother gets a letter where she's invited to the first annual Witches Around the World conference. Turns out, Scary Godmother was abandoned as a pup and was found by the headmistresses of Grimoire's Academy, where they took her in and raised her, and immediately they thought she was weird. You see, the headmistresses are there to train witches and fairies, one specializing in the other. But Scary Godmother has attributes of both. Fairies have wings, but not little bat wings, and as she grew up, everything she did was either not completely witchy or not completely fairy. She was an odd combination of the two. But even though she was a little ostracized by her peers, she did manage to make some friends, a witch and a fairy friend. The school is also where she met Bugaboo. On her way to the convention, Scary has to stop because there's a giant beanstalk blocking her path. She lands and gasp, who could it be other than her old friend from school, Tinkerie? And they get to catching up after not seeing each other in ages. And Tinkerie gives her treats, which is actually fairy cake, which causes Scary to be ensorcelled, which basically means she's bewitched, or in this case, really goofy. And Tinkerie steals her clothes, puts her in a cage, and decides she's going to the convention as Scary Godmother. Also, Orson had a bad report card and is being sent to a vampire camp in order to be a better vampire, which will be important later. It's a B plot now, but it'll tie into the main plot. And it's also seriously messed up what happens to him, so just you wait. Tinkerie is jealous of Scary Godmother, especially since when you're a fairy, you're supposed to be granting kids wishes and getting a princess married to a prince, but she can only get work as a bartender, so she figures that she'll just switch lives with her. Also, side plot, Hannah and Jimmy are going to summer camp, which isn't important now, but will be important later. I'm gonna cut a lot of what they do out of the story since it's not entirely relevant, but again, it's really funny, and you should go out and read it for yourself. There's actually a B plot with just about everyone. So there is a lot of material for you to still read, even if you watch this video. Orson's vampire school is this cave where this super old vampire basically treats the kids like slaves. Like, he'll quote-unquote race some of them that are speaking out against him, block the entrance of the cave with a boulder so that they are outside when the sun is coming up, and they burn alive. And he's even taken some kids and burned half their face just to get them to shut up. And the parents don't know about any of it. Tinkerie soaks up the limelight at the convention because everyone loves Scary Godmother, so they're basically kissing the ground she walks on. And we get a flashback to where they graduated from the academy. Tinkerie graduated as a third-class fairy, which is basically the lowest, and Scary Godmother assumed she wasn't graduating at all, but since her parents are the headmasters, they recognized she's great at what she does. She's just in a category of her own. So they have her graduate as a first-class Scary Godmother. And so the seeds of jealousy were formed. So Tinkerie is going to use this opportunity to do some damage to Scary's reputation. Turns out the camp Hannah is going to is really close to the summer school Orson is going to. So he finds her and asks for help since he can't contact his parents. Bugaboo, while doing his own B-plot story that I'm skipping for this time, finds the real Scary Godmother as she's being put to work at the bar that Tinkerie ditched. And Scary is such a great employee, the owner doesn't want to give her up. He also has no idea who Scary actually is. So it's time to put up your dukes because he's going to protect his employees from random strangers trying to kidnap them. Eventually they manage to clear the air because the other employees rat out Tinkerie, and so he lets Bugaboo take Scary Godmother home. Orson challenges the master vampire to a race before sunup, knowing that he's going to lose, but now has a plan thanks to Hannah. They race throughout the forest and the master makes it back first, but Orson is actually totally fine. And because of some weird rules that the master made up, and because he's freaking out a little bit, he ducks into a grave and they bury him. And so they're free to go, and it's all because Hannah remembered to bring sunscreen, so they were able to fool the master vampire. Bugaboo gets smart and decides that maybe it'd be smarter to bring Scary Godmother to the convention to get things squared away. Just before the witches and fairies were about to let Scary have it for being such a jerk, Bugaboo tells them that there's an imposter that switched places with her. Man, Bugaboo is a really great friend. So the witches brew up a cure for the fairy cake that's causing Scary to be ensorcelled, and so now she can go find Tinkerie and give her a piece of her mind. They go home only to find Orson and Hannah getting married. Oh look, there's Tinkerie. Obviously, Scary Godmother objects. Turns out this was actually Hannah and Orson's plan to help Tinkerie. You see, in order for her to be a fairy godmother, like she's always wanted, she needs to perform a godmother assignment to be promoted. And since Orson is technically a prince of the night, if Tinkerie married them off together, then she'd be promoted. But Scary Godmother's objection ruined it. So Scary Godmother comes up with another plan to help her out. by getting all her friends and a giant to square up against the owner of the bar in a boxing match. And so they basically stage the whole thing so that Tinkerie can swoop in and magically enchant the bar owner from harm, thus establishing her good deed, I guess, and making her a fairy godmother. And then Scary Godmother kicks her ass because she had it coming. And that's the origin of Scary Godmother. Pretty wacky, am I right? Did you like this video? Did you? Please tell me if you like this video. My self-esteem is incredibly low. Don't forget there's not only a compendium where you can get everything that's written and apparently a little bit more, but also Jill Thompson has her own website where you can get your own custom handmade merch from her, including a Scary Godmother doll. And I know my audience, that should be incredibly appealing to you. Go support Jill Thompson and also support me on Patreon. Comment down below, do you want Bugaboo to visit you under your bed? What's wrong is that I keep seeing these hear me out kicks on TikTok and none of them mention anyone from Scary Godmother, and Bugaboo is right there. Bugaboo, more like bug ya to come visit me. I'm specifically making Bugaboo jokes because I don't want to over-sexualize Scary Godmother with funny haha jokes because it feels wrong, but monster fuckers? That's okay. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Stay beautiful and happy Halloween.